Hello everyone, Long Ago Ego here. My name is Jeffrey, and on Sunday I'm going to be playing the board game 1775 Rebellion with a friend. So we're going to go over the basic rules. "1775 is played over 8 rounds. It's a card-driven game. You have to play one movement card. You have to play one movement card on each of your turns. There are only 8 movement cards. You also have 4 event cards. Now, you may play as many event cards as you have in your hand, but of course you have to play one movement card each time. So if you have 3 event cards in your hand, you can't take your turn. You would have to show those 3 event cards, shuffle them into your deck, and then deal yourself 3 more cards until you have at least 1 movement card. Now, on a round, the turn order is random. Each side, if you're playing 2-player, has 2 factions. You either have the British regulars and the colonial loyalists, or you have the Revolutionary Regular Army, or you have the patriots who are supporting the regular army. Okay, now these dice go into the bag, and the next player is drawn randomly. We only know who the next player is after the previous player has had their turn. So you may go first and last, you may go first and second, third and last. It's random as to who will take their turns. For example, in turn 3, you might go last, third and fourth. But then in round 4, you may go first and second. So you may have 4 turns in a row. Okay, completely random, drawn from a bag. Now, within the cards for your faction, you have your 8 movement cards. You have 4 event cards. Now, for the Patriots, militia, they have 1 boat movement card. A boat movement means you may move 3 blocks, 3 armies, 3 small armies, or units of an army, from one location to another location that's accessible by water. Everything else is a land-based movement. Now, for the Continental Army, the regular army, they have 2 event cards that bring the French onto the board. Either 6 French coming into Newport, Rhode Island, which is here, or 4 French coming into Savannah, Georgia. You can't see it here. Okay. Rhode Island here, or Savannah, Georgia, which is down there. Okay. Now, in addition to that, of their movement cards, they have 1 warship. In this case, you can move 2 armies to the same location. So armies from 2 different places to the same place. Okay. Now, for the British regulars, they have 2 event cards. Of their 4, they have 2 event cards that bring Hessians, which are basically German mercenaries, onto the board. Now, this card brings the Hessians into New York City, which is here. The other card brings 6 Hessians into Nova Scotia, into Halifax, which is way, way over here off the edge of the board. So it's basically out in the boonies. Strategically important for the region, but far away from the action. That's why you need to have your warship movement cards. Now, the British have, I believe it's 3 or 4, one army moving by warship, 2 armies moving by warship, and 1 more army moving by warship. So not as many land-based movement cards. Remember, you only have 8. The British regular army, the Redcoats, have 3 warships. So that means they only have 5 land-based movement cards. Now, the Loyalists, the colonials who want to stay with Britain, the Loyalists, they have 1 add Hessians to the board, and those can go anywhere. Okay. Now, they have 1 regular boat movement, which is up to 3 cubes to make an army going to 1 location. Okay. Now, within each faction's movement cards, they have a truce card. Now, the game will last 8 rounds only if a truce card from each of the factions of a side don't come out. Okay. As soon as the second truce card from a side comes out, it means the round is going to, when the round finishes, that's the end of the game. Okay. Now, remember, you have to play a movement card each time. So if you end up with a truce card and 2 event cards, the only movement card you have to play is the truce card. So you may inadvertently end the game sooner than you want if you're not careful with your event cards. As a rule of thumb, if you've got them, play them, those event cards, because you want as much flexibility in your movement cards as you can have. If you've got 1 or 2 event cards in your hand, you've only got, a couple choices. But if you don't have any event cards in your hand, then you've got 3 choices as to movement. Okay. Next thing. On the board, okay, we have a preset placement of armies or units of armies. Now, at the beginning of the game, the person who draws the first turn, they get to place 4 units from each of their factions onto the board, any place where they already have a presence. So you could load up your British regulars and your loyalists all in one spot where you already have someone. Or you could disperse them to strategic points on the board. Okay. Now, after the first player has placed their 4 units from each faction, so it'd be reds and yellow, cubes onto the board, then, before they can take their move, then the other side get to place their 4 for each of their factions anywhere. So it balances out. First player gets to go first, but the second player, well, maybe the second player, because the turn order is random, he gets to know where the placement is before he places his. Now, in addition, before each faction takes their turn, which is random, they get to place 4 of their units So if it was the British regulars' turn to play, if the red cube came out, it's here, then he would place 4 regulars units, so red cubes, this is important, only into a city in a colony that they control. At the beginning of the game, I think the British hold 3 colonies and the Americans hold 2 colonies. So down here, Delaware. It's a very small state, even today. And at the time, it was a very small colony. And it only had 1 district in the whole colony, right? So the British control this spot. So it is one of the places where you can place units at the beginning of Yellow's turn. Or, well, either red or yellow's turn. Okay. Now, Connecticut, up here, we can see Connecticut pretty well. Connecticut here is controlled, both of the districts are controlled by the American side. So we can place units either into the New London city, which is over here in this district, or Hartford, which is over in that position. Now, Rhode Island, still today, is a small state, and it only has 1 district, and it is controlled by the Americans. So Americans can put into Newport, New London, or Hartford, only in this section at the very beginning of the game. So that's kind of an important place early on. Any other of the, well, the British are also in control of Canada. You can't see it very well. This is Canada up here. So Canada and Nova Scotia are controlled. Quebec and Nova Scotia of Canada are controlled by the British. So those 2 areas can also get units put into them at the beginning of your turn as the British side. Now, you can also see that there are some green units here. Now, those are Native American units, and they are neutral. But whoever moves into their district takes over their loyalty. So they will fight for you. As long as one of your units remains with a group of Native Americans, they will fight for that player's side. But it's also important to know that when we talk about control of a colony, the Native Americans come into play. Now, here in New Jersey, the Americans control 1 section and the British control the other section. Now, if the British were to move in and kick them out, then they would control both sections, so they would be able to put units into Princetown or Trenton, either one. Okay, it's now their colony. Now, the number of colonies is important not only for being able to place units at the beginning of your turn, but also in winning the game. The person with the most, controlling the most colonies wins. Okay, now, however, if we go over here, and we see that in Pennsylvania, the Americans controlled 2 sections and the British 1. If the Americans moved into that and knocked out the British, they would not control that colony yet because there are still Native Americans there. They're neutral. They're not on your side until someone moves into their space and gets their loyalty. So it's got to be everything in the colony has to be controlled by you or void of anybody's units, right? So if all these moved over there, and they killed all those guys. Well, you used to be there, so you control this colony. Now, if he moves in there, you, of course, would lose control of that colony because you no longer have both sections. Okay? Now, armies. What constitutes an army? Let me get move my card here. Now, this card says you get to move 3 armies and they get to move 1 space. Now, an army is not the individual cubes. An army is anybody you say is an army. So down here in New York City, 2 yellow cubes and 2 red cubes. I should have taken a red one. Okay. We'll do this one. 2 armies move 3. Now, I can decide that this, it's red. It's in red army. So red has to be composed of at least 1 red unit. So I could have this red unit move 1, 2, 3. Okay, because he passed through friendly territory, he gets to go the full 3 movements. 1, 2, 3. Now, he could have taken both red ones, or he could have taken 1 yellow one, or he could have taken both red ones and both yellow ones, and moved 1, 2, 3. The army is comprised of however many units you want to put into it. Now, of course, it's always best to leave somebody behind. It's also good to have an army composed of both colors. If this army was only red and he moved there, well, he can't. Only the red ones, 1, 2, 3, move there. Now, he can't move again until it's red player's turn. But if he had taken a yellow one with him, then the yellow player could also move that group of cubes. So you get to move on the red player, the yellow player turn, or the blue player, or the white player turn. You get to move any army group of cubes that is made up of at least 1 of your color. Okay, so it's best to have a mixed group. Now, everybody who starts has to finish with that group, and you can't pick up anybody along the way. Okay. And there's a big board. I'm only showing about 40% of it. Yeah. It's a whole big section off in that direction. Okay. Dice. Okay. Now, when fighting, we're going to use dice. Now, each faction has their own dice. Okay. Now, different factions have different numbers of dice, and they have different die faces. Okay. Now, the Continental Army has only 2 blue dice. The Patriot Army has 3. The French regulars have 2. British regulars 2. Loyalists 3. Hessians 2. And Native Americans 2. Now, perhaps you have 10 units, mixed units, in your army, and you've moved into a section where you're going to fight the enemy. Well, if I have 4 blue cubes, I can only fight with 2 of them at a time because I only have 2 blue dice. Now, if I have only 2 white units, I can only fight with the 2. Even though I have 3 dice, I've only got 2 units. Now, if I had 5 units, I could fight with 3. If I had 4, I could fight with 3. If I had 3, I could fight with 3. Okay, but you can only, this is the maximum number of dice. Now, on the dice face, we have this symbol. That's a hit symbol. Now, with that, you will kill 1 unit from the other side, and we're alternating rolling dice. Defender rolls first. Now, the person who is losing the unit gets to choose which units they lose. Okay. Now, if you have this symbol, which you notice not everybody has that symbol. The French regulars never run away. The British regulars never run away. Okay. Now, the other factions sometimes run away. Some run away less often than others. Okay. The Patriot Militia and the Loyalist Militia, they kind of like to go home, have some supper with their family. So they'll run off. Now, if they do run off, they go to this fled units box. Now, they will come back and join your army again when it's time to reinforce. You get 4 new units, and then you get any of your units that are in the fled units box. So if you're yellow, you get 4 new yellow units going into a city of a colony you control, and you get any yellow units that are here. You don't get to put out red units until it's a red unit's turn. Okay, so just because they run away doesn't mean you're losing them forever. If they're dead, they're dead. If they run away, then they're just home for supper and they're going to come back eventually. Okay. Now, one other thing. There's a blank face here. Now, that's important because you have to understand you have very few movement cards. Some of them are only 1 army. Some are 2 armies. The truce cards, I believe, have 4 armies on them. But you don't have a lot of movement. That's why you don't want to have event cards in your hand. You want to play them pretty much as soon as you get them, because you want those units on the board and you want to have flexibility in terms of which cards you can play. Sometimes you only want to move a short distance. So having a movement card that's going to move 3 spaces is wasting a bunch of spaces that you could move later on when you want to move a lot of spaces. Sometimes you want to move a lot of armies. Well, it doesn't help if you only have cards that move 1 army at a time. Okay, so you want flexibility, both in number of armies and in the number of spaces you can go. Now, this is very important because it does add the ability to move units into new areas. So let's say that, go back to this one. This army was silly enough to move only 2 units into the space. Okay. Now, if blue army, let's have blue army roll some dice here. Blue and white. Okay. Okay. Boom. Unfortunately, that's bad luck for this group because there's only 2 units in the army, and the Americans just shot them all to hell. Okay, so bad luck. Now, if I had done this, 1 hit and 1 command decision, he probably would have lost this one off the board. Now, my white unit could then move over here. Okay, he gets to move any place where there isn't. No, he can move any place. He can move any place. He can move into another battle. Now, he cannot move into a place where there's only enemy units. He can move into a place where there's a battle or neutral, like here, but he can't move into an enemy space. Okay? And then he would convince these Native Americans to support his cause. Okay? But he'd be leaving his friend. Now, if he decided to stay here, and then on Red's turn, if he ruled, he got a command decision, he could decide to move over there, or he could decide to move back or over there. Okay? So, command decisions are good because, one, they get vulnerable units out of the battle. You know, if the defenders ruled really well and knocked out lots of your units, well, everybody there is into the next dice roll from you, but if you get a command decision, you can move a unit out. Now, it's also important near the end of the game. For example, if I moved into your space, let's say those are under my control, okay, and I moved into your space, and I roll poorly and I don't kill you, and then you roll and you do this, well, you can move into this space. If I moved here, you get control of the colony. But if I move here, the British still have a presence there, so you don't control that colony yet. And then if I go in here with lots of people, and now I'm the defender and I roll one of these, I can move over there. So you still haven't gotten me. You still haven't gotten control of the colony. Okay, so command decision is one of the best additions, smart additions to the use of dice in this game, because there's some strategy in how to use it, when to use it, but also it gives you that ability to move a little bit further without using a movement card to do so. Okay, so I think that's about all I'm going to talk about in this little video. Thanks for watching.